The international break is over. It's time to get you caught up and back in the FC Barcelona swing of things. Welcome to episode 722 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and I do remind you that even during the international breaks, if you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be a big help. Become a Patreon for as low as $3, or most importantly, join me on Sunday live for the watch along on Big Up for that big one against Valencia, where regardless of the stadium, which we'll get into, at least those of us at home can enjoy it all the same. All right, with all that out of the way, let's dive into the top 5 news of the week. Our first piece of news is concerning the match on Sunday against Valencia, which will take place at the Estadi Johan Cruyff. Is that the Camp Nou? Is that Montjuic? No, it is a much smaller venue this Sunday, and that's, again, I think the highlight of this week's news. And, if Laporta and the club, as they had gone way past that November 2024 deadline, if they had just said that they didn't expect to be playing games again in the Camp Nou until early 2026, yeah, fans would have been frustrated, but I think fans would have been more understanding as opposed to just worrying all about the stadium drama day and even hourly at this point. And I think the counter argument to that would be if Laporta had come out and said, yeah, it's probably going to be early 2026. Well, then that meant that he and the club weren't going to be able to promise that they were going to get back to the one-to-one, because we all knew without gate revenue, getting back to the one-to-one to make signings was going to be a big, big challenge that was likely going to actually have the same result that it did anyway. So here we are, and this weekend, the match against Valencia will take place at the Estadi Johan Cruyff in front of a crowd of presumably 6,600 at capacity. The permits are not yet ready for return to the Camp Nou, and Montjuic is not available because when the club said they wouldn't be back to Montjuic, the city council then allowed other bookings and events in that stadium, including this weekend's Post Malone concert. A small thing I do find to be a positive, though, is that it's not like they're going to a rundown park or a rundown stadium. The Estadi Johan Cruyff is a modern stadium, albeit very small, but it was recently built in the last 10 years. And it does help Barcelona make a little bit of history, as they will now have one of the smallest crowds in Liga history, as well as one of the biggest ones. But the delays to the Camp Nou, that is where the concern lies. The plan was to return in parts, and it was going to be 4 parts, culminating with about 60,000 people by the end of this season, and everybody there next season. The first step would be about 27,000 people, but that's not yet ready either. In the big picture, I'm not that concerned with Barcelona playing in a smaller stadium against Valencia, and very likely Getafe next week. Newcastle is away at St. James, so that won't be an issue on Thursday. So I wouldn't expect you to get too comfortable with the viewing experience at the Estadi Johan Cruyff. And the hope is that this is only a problem this weekend while the Post Malone concert is happening at Montjuic. But who really knows at this point? Barcelona need to be able to play at least one match at the Camp Nou before they host a Champions League match. And UEFA might still reject hosting at the Camp Nou if they don't find that all the safety and permits and even the entrances and exits in and out of the stadium, that is the most important thing that those contracts are looking at, not banners and all the fancy details and fanfare that go into a new stadium opening. All that said, I do think that the drama related to the stadium is more about the noise outside of the club than in it. I think most Kool-Aids, especially the ones season ticket holders, are understanding that this happens. It happens to pretty much every club that redoes their stadiums. So I think fans are much more accepting than outside media. And of course, it's Barcelona, so there was bound to be a lot of drama. My hope is that they get in as soon as possible and the club can just put this one all behind us. Our second piece of news is about the injuries piling up, because there are no excuses as to where the team is playing. I expect 3 points, whether it's the Estadi Johan Cruyff, Montjuic, or the Camp Nou. But the real excuses are in who is not going to be playing for at least the coming weeks and how Hansi Flick is going to navigate those injuries. Alejandro Balde was injured while not on international duty, and while he will be out for a number of weeks, potentially back in time for PSG, I think the club pretty much has that under control, while De Jong's injury that he picked up with the Netherlands is more of a knock that will keep him out of action against Valencia, but he reportedly should be ready at 100% for Newcastle on Thursday. So Balde and De Jong, those are kind of the demon that you know. The demons you don't know is the recovery from an ACL injury, and that's where we talk about Gavi, who is dealing with knee discomfort in the same knee where he suffered the ACL injury. The course of action is hope that he continues to improve over the next 3 weeks with a conservative treatment. If it doesn't work, though, he'll have to undergo an orthoscopic surgery, which are really common after ACLs, to clean that up a bit. And back in the day, I can say I was a big fan of Amari Stoudemire of the Phoenix Suns, then the Knicks, and he constantly had this on the difference between Gavi and a lot of the orthoscopic surgeries that I think about NBA players. That's actually about 1.5 feet of height, so it's a little bit different when dealing with Gavi. That would unfortunately keep him out, though, for another 5 to 6 weeks afterwards, which would result in him missing most of the first half of the season. That would definitely be a bummer, and all is hoping that it's not a larger problem and that the club doctors do what's best for him in the long run. And speaking of long run, with some more good news, Marc Bernal is expected to be in the squad and potentially see the field against Valencia this weekend. Marc Bernal reportedly wanted to play in the Joan Gamper match, but Hansi Flick told him that he wanted him for 15 years, not one game, so he continued to make him wait. But that waiting could be over now as he's in the squad against Valencia and could get some late minutes after Marc Casado gets the start. I will reiterate this one more time or many more times here. Everybody needs to be patient with Bernal this season. While his game doesn't really rely on speed, it does rely on quickly changing directions, and he may need to build that up for the remainder of the season. So I'm not talking even 90 minutes because I wouldn't expect Bernal to go even 60 minutes throughout the remainder of this season, but just getting some minutes as an 18-year-old and looking like himself again, those are all the goals this year. So don't put all your hope on Bernal just yet. Like Hansi Flick said, it's not one game or even one season, it's 15 years for a guy who's 18 years old. Our third piece of news is about Thiago Alcantara's Barcelona return. From one pivot to one of the past, Thiago Alcantara did not spend too many years in the Barcelona first team, but he is still a player having played at Barcelona, at Bayern Munich, at Liverpool, that all those young midfielders could definitely learn from, including Marc Bernal. It is hard to believe that he is still just 34 years old, but the former La Masia talent has returned, has finally gotten all the bureaucratic stuff done in England, and is back officially. Last season, he was apparently in the ear of Casado, and I think the biggest beneficiaries of his return will be the Spanish midfielders in that position, including Gavi, Casado, and Bernal, maybe some De Jong in there, and even Guille Fernandez and Dro Fernandez. The language component, especially for the young Spanish midfielders, is huge. With Hansi Flick, of course, yes, he can speak Spanish, and many of those youngsters in La Masia do learn English, but the language barrier and Thiago Alcantara's experience as well is going to be huge in terms of training, which is where he's reportedly going to be more as an advisor in training and not expected to be part of the first team bench for home or away matches this year. Either way, I say welcome back to Alcantara, or not even welcome back, but welcome home. Our fourth headline is about Raphinha's frustrating break. It's kind of on the topic of injuries, but I guess you want to call this one pre-injury, as not only, of course, as one of those South Americans, does Raphinha have to make the largest trips, but Raphinha was also frustrated about one of the trips that he did make. He may not be totally ready to jump back into 90 minutes of football after needing to play against Bolivia at altitude on Tuesday. Raphinha was not very happy that former Real Madrid boss and now Brazil manager Carlo Ancelotti let Vini Jr., Rodrigo, and Eder Militao get some time off, while he had to play 30 minutes at 4,000 meters of altitude. He didn't criticize the manager in public statements, merely saying there was a challenge and a difficult game, but you read the tea leaves and he wasn't very happy. The good news is for him and his team is that Brazil have qualified for the World Cup, where Raphinha will likely be next summer if healthy. For Barcelona, if Raphinha does not start, that could mean a start instead for Marcus Rashford, who did score a PK goal with England over the international break, so maybe he is coming back with a little bit of confidence too. And then our fifth piece of news is concerning the U18s claiming the Club World Cup at youth level. So congratulations to them. That is the Juvenil B, or the U18s for Barcelona, which are largely 16 and 17-year-old kids. And as I spoke about a few weeks ago with the U20 matchup over there in Brazil, this was very much a case of, well, they're probably not bringing the best of those categories because, again, the best 16 and 17-year-olds are playing with the Juvenil A or the U19s, or they're playing in Barça Athletic, in the case of Fernandez cousins and Dro Fernandez. So this is even the best U18 squad that Barcelona could have said. And with more than 70 names that I've already covered for Barça Athletic and down, that apparently is still not enough because the U18s had some big standout performances there as well. They faced off in the Youth Club World Cup in the final against Racing Club from Argentina, and a goal from Ukrainian forward Artem Rybak, who is just 15 years old, sealed the win. The goal came 10 minutes from time, so a clutch goal from the kid as well. Rybak's goal in the final was made possible by the saves from keeper Gerard Sala, who had two big games in both the semis and the final to keep things close. But the big name to know out of this tournament for the Juvenil B squad is Iñaki Martinez, who had a brace in the semifinals against Palmeiras, which was a 2-2 draw that ended 4-2 for Barcelona on penalties. Iñaki Martinez is a 16-year-old left winger who is right-footed and has an innate ability to come inside and cause some havoc. He is from Soria in northwest Catalonia, then moved to Gimnàstic before getting discovered by Barcelona and moving to La Masia, which does feel like a future La Masia profile to me. So I guess I'll start getting to work on some of that stuff. Of course, people love when I cover the La Masia stuff. But for you, just put on your calendars. It's Valencia against Barcelona for the watch long on Big Up on Sunday. So please join me for that. You can jump in the chat for free. And there's some new things coming to Big Up this season as well. I've also got some big things planned, as always, on the YouTube channel, on the podcast apps, and over on Patreon, where we can continue to get these shows without the ads. Until next time, of course, the Barca.